Driving through the heart of the Italian lakes and with its beautiful scenery and stunning architecture, it couldn't be more European. But it's also where one Chinese car maker is making its bid for the European car market by launching 2 brand new electric vehicles here on the shores of Lake Maggiore. A statement of confidence in the European market.
If you look at the electrification trends, European is ahead, so European presents the most opportunities.
That's even as poor electric vehicle sales contribute to cutbacks and strikes for European car makers, and despite the EU hitting Chinese-made battery-powered cars with steep tariffs to slow down their penetration of the European market.
Europe is open to competition, but not for a race to the bottom. We must defend ourselves against unfair practices.
This is what's alarmed the European Commission. Chinese-made electric vehicles, or EVs, loading for export in Shanghai. The number sold in the EU has risen nearly 8-fold in the last 4 years. Globally, the picture's even starker.
2 out of every 3 electric vehicles that are manufactured in the world made in China, and 3 out of every 4 batteries used in electric vehicles made in China.
But many European car makers are against tariffs on Chinese imports.
We do oppose tariffs. We don't think that's the right measure.
And the EU's claim of unfair practices, rejected as unjustified by China, obscures other reasons for Chinese vehicle makers commanding lead in the race to the electric future. So what's really going on? We found our first big clue at the 2024 Paris Auto Show.
我觉得领跑是一个科技公司，因为电动汽车现在是叫汽车，但其实它是一个电子产品。
Listen to 2 Chinese tech entrepreneurs turned car founders. Both talk about electric vehicles like a Silicon Valley CEO would about software and silicon chips.
是一个迭代速度非常快的，跟电子整个半导体产业，跟整个就是说 IT 技术紧密相关，你的速度非常快。这个你需要跟上这个节奏，就像它是大家形容它是一个就是带着4个轮子的一个大手机。
我们要做大量的技术创新，比如说如何把一个汽车做得更安全、更安静。 用同样的电池能不能跑得更长？同时在软件、在 AI 这一块的方面，我们也在做巨大的研发。在去年我们大概有超过10个亿美金的研发费。
Many Chinese companies also started producing advanced models packed with software features just as the pandemic hit, blindsiding Western car executives.
Until the Shanghai Auto Show in 2023, most automotive executives couldn't enter China for 2, 3, 4 years. So what seemed like a blink of an eye, things changed. I was at the Shanghai Motor Show and I saw these automotive executives see all these green plates, walk around the Shanghai Motor Show and just were in total shock. They open and close the doors, make sure that the fit and finish was good, and then they got in the vehicles, looked at the software, you know, kind of played with the infotainment system. We're like, wow, this is crazy. They're beating us. And we're seeing some of that, the fear now.
So a shock in China and facing a huge challenge on their home turf in European markets. BYD is the biggest and best known Chinese electric vehicle maker, recently generating more revenue than Tesla globally.
So I'm Imogen Bogle. I'm one of the presenters and producers on the Everything Electric Show and Fully Charged Show, which are YouTube shows dedicated to all things electric vehicles and clean energy.
And you've decided that you will help me go through a test drive with this BYD because you're very experienced with the Chinese electric vehicles.
I'll do my best.
Okay, thank you, Imogen.
Imogen has road tested lots of EVs for a popular YouTube show.
I mean, this car, what do you think about the way it's driving? I'm experiencing it now for the first time, but you've had more experience driving the BYD cars. I imagine it certainly feels
very luxurious. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. I'd heard that.
Well, that's the thing. The BYD vehicles are just absolutely brilliant. They are definitely really competitive from a price perspective as well. And it means that when you experience that really high quality and that really lovely drive, the really beautiful interfaces, there's somewhat of a surprise that, oh my goodness, you're getting this for, you know, a comparatively lower price point than you might expect.
It's not just BYD. Chinese EVs have got a growing reputation for high-quality, competitive prices and technology that some say could change car owners' relationship with their vehicles.
I think they don't realize the potential that these electric cars have in their lives. At the moment, it's seen as, again, that transportation device from A to B. It needs to have some passion, some, you know, drivability. That's what the most important thing is for European consumers. But I think once they realize that this tech can be integrated with their phone, integrated with their house, you know, it becomes so much more part of their life, they'll want more and more of this tech in the future.
That's what Chinese company Leapmotor's betting on. In northern Italy, it unveiled 2 new models as it launched an international brand in partnership with global car maker Stellantis. This car is packed with features, a lot of safety features, technology features, as you'd probably expect from a Chinese car manufacturer. They're hoping that the European market will love all of these different features, but it is kind of complicated to get your head around at first. They reassure us that it's going to become intuitive. A favorable response from motoring journalists prompted some bold claims from Stellantis, the majority owner of the joint venture.
So I think that the same thing will happen to every single consumer as soon they will step in a showroom, they test drive the car, and they will have this kind of life-changing experience, say, okay, I'm ready to take a leap.
Salespeople will always talk up their product. But what explains that striking level of confidence? To find the answer, we headed to China. Just a few hours southwest of Shanghai is Leapmotor's production center.
你好，你好，欢迎光临领跑汽车制造基地。领跑汽车创立于2015年，汽车从 IT 行业跨界而来，智能驾驶系统、自造自研的比例占据整车的60%。
So a car maker only founded 10 years ago that grew from a tech company and produces 60% in-house. Compare that with this.
So 5% of logistics, 10% of added value in our plants, 85% of parts that we buy from the suppliers.
That was the global boss of Stellantis, owner of Chrysler, Jeep, Citroën, Fiat, Maserati, and more, telling Italian MPs why it's so hard to bring down costs. A struggle that lost him his job soon afterwards. So it's not just what they make, but what it costs that makes Chinese EV makers like Stellantis' partner Leapmotor so confident. The key is what's known as vertical integration, control of the whole production process. So we're going to see where the batteries are made now. Of course, this is the heart of any electric car, and for Chinese car companies like Leapmotor, the heart too of their competitive advantage is having these battery plants on site.
These are the finished batteries going into the car.
Yes.
So we see how many of these go into the car? Just one?
No, there are 4 big modules and 1 small module in one car.
Batteries are not just the core technology of an electric car, but on average 40% of its cost. So how you make them and how efficiently has a big effect on the final price of a vehicle. We saw how Leapmotor buys individual cells and combines them into batteries. That allows it to create its own electronic architecture, the foundation of an electric vehicle.
So arguably, this is what makes Leapmotor not just a car manufacturer, but a battery manufacturer too.
Because while they're buying in battery cells from other factories around China, it's the way that they put them together, the circuitry and other elements, that they say gives them a competitive and a unique edge. And the batteries have just meters to travel to the assembly line next door, turning out 1,000 vehicles a day.
目前我们这条线呢是我们的最终线，然后像我们左右侧的这个加注机呢，在进行最终的一个液体加注，加注完成之后呢，会进行我们的一些电检的一个检测，最终呢，相当于整车已经全部的合格的装配下线了。
So no expensive legacy from producing fossil fuel engines, their own advanced technology produced in-house, cheaper labor costs. Little wonder Stellantis wanted to team up with and learn from companies like Leapmotor.
The Chinese, they have a 30% cost competitive edge in their sourcing compared to ours. Which means if I compare the cost of our EVs to the cost of the Chinese EVs when they get out of their plant, they are 30% lower.
So how did Chinese EV makers get so far ahead? The sheer scale of China's domestic market is one reason. In August 2024, it became the first country to hit 1 million EV sales in 1 month. It was just 24 years ago that total sales of all cars passed 1 million a year for the first time in China. The central government became concerned about pollution, energy security, and the ability of Chinese car makers to compete internationally. So it made a key decision.
There has been a policy since the turn of this century that prioritized weaning away the dependency on internal combustion engine propulsion in prioritizing investments in the next generation of whatever would replace the internal combustion engine. China decided early in this game that it was going to guide this industry toward alternative propulsion technologies, which is why now, today, China makes 2 out of every 3 of the world's electric vehicles.
这是燃料电池汽车。燃料电池汽车呢，是用氢气和氧气结合的过程当中发电。
The policy became known as the corner overtaking strategy. Its intellectual driver was this man, Wang Gong, a former engineer for Audi, who proposed it in a paper in the year 2000. He became China's science and technology minister in 2007. In an interview 2 years later, he was already sounding upbeat.
我在听您说这个新能源汽车的时候，我在想一个问题哈，汽车工业是否有可能有一天跟发达的国家去齐平？
这是我们奋斗的目标。我当时就是因为这个情况回国工作，当时考虑的就是要跨越式的发展，就是您刚才所说的，哪一天我们达到和他们齐平，我可以说现在我们有了这样的先决条件。现在齐平，它不是指现在水平的齐平，齐平是在讲5年以后我们能不能齐平。
Wang Gong is now known as the father of China's EV because of his extraordinary success in surpassing that goal. It was achieved with investment in battery research and production, cheap credit, land use permits, infrastructure investment, and subsidies. But foreign companies could get those too. Tesla's Gigafactory in Shanghai, built in 2019 with central government backing, is credited with jolting Chinese companies into upping their game.
There's a Chinese proverb that is like the catfish effect. And you throw a catfish in a pond with lazy fish, and all the fish get stronger because of the catfish. And so I think a lot of people use that as an analogy with Tesla entering the China market, because it strengthened all the other players.
Shenzhen is absolutely spectacular, lit up at night. You really feel that you're in the center of China's technology heartland. We're here because it can tell you so much about modern China. By night, a coordinated light show along the waterfront. By day, it's the streets that are buzzing.
There's no better place that really captures 2 key Chinese characteristics: entrepreneurial energy and a love of technology than these markets in Shenzhen.
Shenzhen's also an important part of this story. city started electrifying public transport in 2011, and by 2017 had electrified all of its 15,000 buses. Its 21,000 taxis followed soon after. That switch generated data and contracts for battery and EV companies and helped change wary public attitudes.
就是来推广这个纯电动出租车的推行，通过各项的一个举措，那其实市民在逐渐的观念中也发生了一个改变。其实他们在环境治理这一块的获得感也在慢慢的增强，那环境状况其实也是在逐步的得到改善的。
You can see the results on the streets, not just in taxis and buses, but in all the green number plates on privately owned cars. And at this charging station, run by BYD and Shell. With outlets for 258 vehicles, it is the largest in China and second largest in the world. So does the role of central and local government in all this back up EU and US accusations of unfair practices? A misconception, according to Chinese car makers.
也不能说绝对没有补贴啊，尤其是在这个产业刚开始的时候。其实是政府呢在引导在这个上面呢是有一些，然后呢，但是呢，随着我们产业逐渐的发展起来，其实呢并没有，我们现在对电动车的这种补贴其实是基本上已经退出了，我们只有呢个别的可能在一些税费上面有一些这种优惠。
In the West, that kind of government support is known as industrial policy, something that fell out of favor with the rise of free market doctrine. But is gaining renewed respectability.
There is no nation that has built a competitive transportation sector that didn't have a heavy hand of government intervention. I mean, the nationwide US highway system was not the creation of the automotive industry, right? The securing of the energy supply chain of oil and gas is not the creation of the automotive industry. That's a creation of securing the supply chain of Middle East oil toward the Western economies of the world. So the idea of the government having a role in the shaping of the decisions being made in the market, there's ample precedent for that everywhere in the world, not just in China. And if that's in the strategic interest of your industry, if it makes your domestic competitors more competitive versus the global auto industry, then so be it. That's what policies should be guiding.
China's already moving ahead with the next stage of intelligent driving. Autonomous road sweepers, refuse trucks, and buses follow each other down the road. Now the low-altitude economy is also beginning to take off with drone deliveries and flying vehicles, all operating below 1,000 feet.
Wow. I would like one of these in the boot of my car, I have to say. That's incredible.
This is what XPeng calls the land aircraft carrier. Out of it comes this supersized drone, which can carry 2 people. We didn't get it off the ground, but the man who created it told me it's easy to learn to fly.
5分钟就可以上手，3个小时成为高手。
Yeah.
可以自己操控，也可以自动飞行。
Wow.
I did at least get to fly it virtually.
So today we are going to experience the manual mode.
Okay.
Manual. Okay. So you can
test out how good I can fly.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah. And if I crash?
Normally no.
Okay. Normally no.
Oh yes.
The first time for everything.
Just don't land in the water or in the mountains.
Okay.
On the mountains.
Is it mountainous where we are? Yeah. Okay.
XPeng Aero HT just started building a factory to produce 10,000 of these. The founder says they've reached that point thanks to all the work done building China's EV industry.
以前新能源汽车中国的电动车这么多年的发展，培育了完备的供应链、研发和人才。中国也有巨大的这种消费市场，所以在过去10几年，中国发展新能源汽车、电动车，给未来的飞行汽车储备了包括动力、飞控、自动驾驶，包括整个的供应链非常的完备，所以飞行汽车在中国很容易发展起来。
So while China's EV industry is taking off, legacy car makers in Europe are struggling with a huge structural challenge. To understand that, it helps to go back to where it all started. It was Carl Benz who developed the gasoline-powered automobile in 1886, setting off a global revolution in transport and the environment. This museum in southern Germany takes you through the history, not just of his company, but of an industry which has been a mainstay of European and other Western economies, built on an invention whose basic principles haven't changed for well over a century.
This is an internal combustion engine from 1886. It really is an early example of a technology that has fundamentally shaped our world over the last 130 years. But that history is now coming to a close, and a new future is being written. For legacy car makers in Europe and elsewhere, they're struggling to find their place in it.
Some say they've been complacent because the glamour attached to their design history has sustained demand. True or not, there has been widespread emotional resistance to abandoning storied European brands and their noisy internal combustion engines. So the challenge for the industry is to electrify much-loved historic brands. Fiat's converted its iconic 500. Launched in 1957, for decades the 500 has been celebrated as the car of the ordinary Italian. But now Fiat workers are striking, in part because poor sales of the electric 500 are pushing them out of work. And they say even they can't afford to buy it.
Oggi se io mi devo comprare una 500 elettrica, chiaramente parto da una base raddoppiata che arrivo già sui 25.000 euro come parte di... E chiaramente uno stipendio, se io lavoro ininterrottamente, il mio importo lordo annuale si aggirerebbe intorno ai 26.000-28.000.
With batteries nearly half the total cost of an EV, Stellantis is trying to make them cheaper. But the workers place much of the blame on the EU, which is tightening regulations on emissions from 2025 and effectively banning fossil fuel cars from 2035. Too fast, they say.
Quindi secondo me doveva comunque rimanere la macchina a motore e piano piano puntare sempre di più sull'elettrico, quindi doveva essere una transizione un po' più lenta di quello che hanno fatto fino adesso.
Low demand meant Stellantis' main production lines were shut down when we visited. But this gearbox plant they showed us also illustrates the struggle facing legacy car makers. Stellantis says it will meet EU deadlines and is committed to the electric future. But it's still making units like these for petrol hybrid electric vehicles. Like many European car makers, for now, it's hedging its bets because of the slow uptake of full EVs.
During this period, we have to move in parallel. We have to move in parallel because obviously we have to make flexibility, we have to be flexible regarding the customer demand.
For Europeans, it's a painful irony that there have been previous failed attempts to go electric, like Fiat's own X123, launched in 1972, now sitting in the company's museum in Turin. So why, when that failed, are EVs the future now?
Nobody was interested to purchase this car because, because of the limited range of potential use of the car in terms of autonomy of the batteries, but because the idea to have a battery-powered vehicle was not really compelling in comparison with the internal combustion packages. So that's why the concept has remained a one-off and has remained on the shelf in some ways. What has changed is that the electric car now are really resembling and representing a substantial solution comparable to internal combustion packages.
But now everyone can offer that solution in Europe. Chinese manufacturers like BYD are offering it under the nose of Fiat in Turin. But the relatively slow consumer uptake of EVs in Europe is even causing challenges for them.
The Italian government introduced some incentives to the buying of electric cars, but they ended up in June. At the moment we are facing a difficult moment because there is less interest in electric cars compared to hybrid or petrol engines.
So people aren't yet buying enough electric vehicles to meet the EU's target. That's because they're too expensive. But it's also about charging capacity. Europe is building electric infrastructure, but at nowhere near the pace of China. One recent report said China had more than 3 times as many chargers as the EU, United Kingdom, and European Free Trade Area combined. It all adds up to an existential challenge for car makers across Europe. Workers at VW, the EU's largest manufacturer, have also been striking. But some industry observers say it's time to face up to brutal reality. Do you think we'll see the collapse of one of the legacy car makers in the near future? And what do you think that would?
I mean, it's very sad. I think it's inevitable. I don't think in the near future those companies are so enormous and so entrenched that it will take a while. But I think it's inevitable that if they don't adapt, then they just can't. They can't. You know, the arguments about whether the future is electric are basically non-existent anymore. It's boring. Who cares? You know, if you really believe that, then please carry on, because it isn't. You know, the future is electric. Electric motors are just, as a machine, they are so much more efficient. And if it's okay with people to import toxic fossil fuel that costs a lot of money and then refine it and then transport it and then put it in a car and then burn it once for a few thousandths of a second, and then it turns into a gas that's toxic. If that's okay, then I won't argue with you. You know, but I think the arguments against that old technology now are overwhelming.
Chinese EVs lined up with European models as German motor executives gathered in Stuttgart, southern Germany.
Dann, wie hieß es, tough business conditions. Ich würde es auch sagen, tough political conditions.
They knew they faced some big challenges. Re-engineering their entire industry while facing high labor and energy costs, as well as Chinese competitors without those same issues. But would tariffs help them beat Chinese competition?
Bullshit. Sorry. It's bullshit. If the German manufacturers produce in China too, this is the first signal. The second aspect is we have joint ventures. German manufacturers and suppliers have joint ventures with companies in China.
We do oppose tariffs. We don't think that's the right measure because at the end of the day, you know, this is going to be an escalating mechanism where nobody benefits, and competition at the end of the day, if it's fair and if it's free, is the benefit for consumers.
Sustained investment over many years, an integrated supply chain, no encumbering history, and a relentless focus on innovation have given Chinese manufacturers a head start in the race to the electric future. Can European car makers catch up? If they do, it will almost certainly involve learning from Chinese companies, but the benefits, say Chinese company bosses, will flow both ways.
我们采用反向合作的模式，利用我们产品的优势，利用他们销售渠道的优势，我们一起合作，就是把这个整个新能源汽车能够更好的去推广。
所以我觉得永远要认为三人行必有我师，永远要相信，你不管去到哪里，应该跟当地共赢，然后有更多的朋友，然后做到技术的差异，做到创新的不同，然后做到自己的个性差异。
Europe and China are both aiming for an electric future. The question for the EU and for legacy car makers is not just who has the largest share of the market, but who is in the driving seat.